Welcome everybody to the Neuromasters Show, where we uncover the transformative powers of the mind. I'm Reg Malhotra, your host, and I'm here to guide you with practical tools and inspiring stories grounded in neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis. Now, whether you're a high achiever feeling stuck or a growth seeker looking to overcome setbacks, join us each week to break through barriers and achieve profound personal and professional growth. So let's dive in and unlock your potential. Welcome back to Neuromasters Podcast. My name's Reg, and I'm really excited today because I have someone here who I've worked with closely over a period of time, who is a parent, who is a husband, who is a business leader. And I was very excited to have him on the show because I want to talk about something that's very close to me. It's close to him and it's close to a lot of people, and that's the idea of parenting. So Abidhan, this is Abidhan Franco. Abidhan, welcome to this show. Welcome to this episode. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you.
Good. And last week you and I were talking in part of a normal sessions where we worked through some of the challenges and opportunities. And I know this topic of parenting has come up again. It comes up a lot in our discussions. We're both dads.
We're almost always talking about that.
We almost end up there.
It's so important to us.
Yeah, and partly because we're both dads. We both have, sons that are in that late teen, early 20s space. I think yours are both in their 20s.
Yeah, one is 22 and the other one's 18.
Okay, so mine is 21 and nearly 17. So I think that's where I can relate to some of the things you talk about, some of the things you say. And I wanted you on this show because I think a lot of people need to hear us talk about this idea as to what it means to be a parent in 2025, 2024, right? And the coming times, what it means to be a parent. What are some of the typical challenges now that perhaps didn't exist before? And in any case, what are some of the things that parents in general need to do more of? I'm quite passionate about it, Abidhan. I know you are too. You recently mentioned to me, we've been working together and talking about some of the ways to help our kids and help their mindsets, also help their performance, because as it happens, both of your sons are in college wrestling.
Yes.
So you have that additional pressure and additional responsibility that I know you feel about how do I get these boys to not only perform at their best, but also how do they manage themselves when they don't perform?
Yes,
right?
it's a very difficult thing to do, to manage, I think, because they have normal teenage stress going on in their lives at school, friends, social activity, and on top of that, you throw the sport that they love and that they want to excel at and that they want to go to college, and it's a very competitive world, right? And a lot of things happen that don't go their way, and they quickly have to learn how to deal with frustration, how to deal with critique, how to deal, it's a lot. And they can't do it by themselves, definitely. And
I mean, they have coaches and stuff, but something needs to happen at home as well.
Exactly. But then, parents that are behind them that want the best for them, because every parent wants the best for their kid. And there's times when you're like, where do I go now? What do I do now? Like, I don't have the answer. And it's important to, reach out and try to advance or, explore techniques, different people that can help.
I love what you're saying there. And, here at Neuromasters Academy, as you know, I'm very passionate about helping people with their mindset, with their, mastery of their emotions. But oftentimes I find that a lot of the people we work with, a lot of our students, a lot of the people who come and learn these techniques and tools and skills, they just happen to be parents.
Yeah.
I would say as many as 80% of people who come into our courses are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and they're all parents, majority of them. And, the point you just made earlier about needing to work with your children, it's inevitable. At some point, you need to be involved. At some point, you need to intervene, but you also need to know how far is too far.
Exactly. It's a fine line, and it's, you don't want to turn it into pushing or pulling, but showing, right? And I think because the kids, when we were teenagers, we thought we knew everything. We thought we didn't need anything. We thought we have it all under control, and we don't. Like, even now, I don't think we have everything under control, but we have a broader view of things, and Narrow Masters Academy has helped me realize that and change my mindset in that. When I started out as a parent, I always thought, I'm the boss here, and you got to do as I say. And then I was like, okay, you got to do as I say. I
remember having those conversations.
You got to do as I say, and you got to do as I do. And I think that's a level up, right? Okay, I'm going to show them with example.
Right.
And I've tried so hard to do that and lead my kids by example. I want them to work, I work. I want them to work out, I work out. I want them to eat right, I eat right. I want them to not do drugs, I don't do drugs. But there comes a time where that's not enough, right? And you got to realize when you're pushing and shoving, and when you just show, and when you just have different approaches. And Neuromasters Academy has helped me a lot in that aspect of parenting, because it's given me a different point of view. Like, I remember one conversation we had, you and I, in the very beginning. You were like, you got to stop thinking of yourself as their dad and think of yourself as a mentor. And that just, changed everything. And then one day you said, you're raising men. You're not raising your 18-year-old, your 15-year-old. You're raising a future man. So, you got to give them respect, like you respect another man, right? And you're not going to talk over them, yell at them, make them feel bad. You're just going to show. And I think that has helped me a lot. I don't know what my kids have to say about this, but it's definitely changed our relationship.
Well, it's a difference in the thinking structure. Thanks for bringing that up. That's a very important point about, and I often talk about that. As parents, we do want the best for our children, right? Yep. And to some level, we do see their success or lack thereof as a reflection of us. Now, you and I have spoken about this. Well, there is a care factor. We want our children to succeed because that's natural, right? It's impossible for a parent, virtually impossible for a parent to say, that's my child, and I don't want the child to do well. Like, nobody said that ever, right? And that's where the parent's mindset is critical, Abidhan. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. It's like, how much of what we are wanting them to do is for us to feel better about ourselves, and how much of that is just, us being a parent and wanting them to do great. And yes, that came up. I realized that there is a point at which I've got to stop trying to win their love. I'm going to repeat that. There is a point where as a parent, we have to stop trying to win their love. Listen, whether we believe it or not, whether we see evidence or not, our kids do love us, right? I've been shouting at the top. There's a natural bond, right? And they do respect us. We've got to do something really crazy for them to completely disrespect us. And even then, deep inside their hearts, they're very forgiving because there is that natural bond. And I make this point. At some point, you need to move from just parent to guide and mentor. And that can only happen if you're not trying to be their friends, if you're not trying to win their love, if you're not trying to say, hey, I know what's right for you.
Yeah.
So tell me how clearly you started to play with that. Everybody's a work in progress. Everyone's trying to do this. This is a change in a lifelong mindset. But you made a lot of strides in that. You've told me, normally, Reg, I would have gone this way, but I stopped and I took a different approach. Tell me about that.
That thought you just mentioned, we got to be honest with ourselves first, right? When we say things like, I want the best for my children, you got to really be honest with yourself and like you said, and ask and be realistic.
Right.
Do I really want what's best for him, or do I want what's best for me as a parent? Do I want to brag about my kid? Do I want to, and that's, parents, a lot of parents act that way and they don't even realize it.
Right.
But the moment you stop and you think and you're honest with yourself, you can realize there's a lot of things you do on a day-to-day basis that are towards you, not towards them.
Wow.
Right. And it's important to be aware.
It's important to be aware, and it's a hard, because listen, there is nothing materially wrong with us feeling good from time to time.
No,
right?
and we're competitive, right?
Yeah.
If you're a competitive person, of course you want your kid to win the little race,
of course.
Right? Of course you want your kid, but when is it about you? When is it not about them? Maybe they don't want to do that. That maybe they're happier doing so. They will excel at something else, but you're just insisting, and and you're breaking the relationship down without even realizing, and that's the worst part.
Yeah. In our school, Abidhan, I know you've attended some of our events and learned a lot and spoken about them with me. We talk a lot about the unconscious mind, the subconscious mind, our personal histories, right? How did we get to be who we are? What are the events that took place in our life that shaped who we are? And, that's an important element here. First you got to become aware. Is this only for them, or my own self-aware, my own self-worth? And I want a lot of dads to listen to this, and moms for that matter. How much of our self-worth, our being okay with who we are, is derived from our children's success? So that's point one. And so the other part of what I was saying was, what happens, and as you know, in our school, we talk a lot about our programming, our conditioning, what we carry from the past. And a lot of that we carry from our childhood, right? Mm-hmm. We work with adults from all over the world. And one thing in common, there are things that happened in childhood. There are things that we grew up with that we need to reset. We need to clean up. We need to make a new meaning. And I think I'm really proud of people like you. I'm really happy people like you who are raised children and are willing to understand the impact of what you say on the children.
Yes, it's very important.
So where I'm going is, at what point does our desire for what they should do, what they should be, what is right for them, at what point can that turn into resentment? You see, Abidhan, I mentioned to you earlier, I've spoken to a lot of people where and by the way, the parents come from a good place. Like, if you want your child to be an elite sports person, it's a better thing than wanting them to be nothing and guiding them to nothing and not having them have that drive. But I've also seen occasions where the child has grown up, turned around, and now resented the parent.
Yes. And the activity.
Because they felt it wasn't their choice. They just did it. So talk to me about that. I think we've spoken about that. I know your boys do love wrestling. They're both in wrestling. But at some point, that I feel, from what I remember, it did come up as a potential issue.
It totally did. And I've seen it over and over again. My kids wrestle, like you said, right? And they've been involved in some sort of wrestling since they were 5 and 7.
Right.
I started them out doing jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, because I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt.
So you were a wrestler, or you were in the physical combat sport thing yourself?
I was just into jiu-jitsu.
Got it.
I boxed in high school, but as a young parent, I was involved in jiu-jitsu, and I was going up the ranks in that, and I thought it was a great sport for my kids, and I put them in there. And I have 2 sons, and we had 2 different results.
Right.
One loved it and believed it was his calling for life.
Right.
And the other one was like, why am I here? Why are you bringing me here? And it was a constant battle.
And why are you bringing me here?
Why are you? So you can learn to defend yourself. Why do you want me to learn to hurt people? Stuff like that. Wow. And because he's Emilio, you know him. He's a very smart kid, and he'll challenge you, psychologically.
Yes.
And so we just kept at it. And there was a moment when he was reaching high school that I realized I went that wrong way with him. I try to impose it, and because it's a good thing, I tried well, if you don't want to do anything, this is what you're going to do. I remember I used to say a lot, I would ask him, why do you speak Spanish? Mm-hmm. That's our native language, right? And well, because I was born here in this family. Exactly. That's why you do jiu-jitsu. Because you were born here. You want to learn another language? Go learn another language.
Right.
But
okay, so you had a way of at least responding to that.
Yeah. I mean, I always try. But what I'm coming at is when they reached high school, there was a day when he said, you know what, Dad, I'm not going to do jiu-jitsu anymore. I was like, okay, what are you going to do? I'm going to wrestle. Which is very similar. It's basically the same thing. But it's his thing.
It was his choice.
His choice.
So how did you feel at the time when he just said that to you?
I felt bad. I felt bad. I felt like betrayed. I felt like all this time is wasted. You were so good. You were ranked. You were this, that. We a lot of things. But then I started going to his competitions in wrestling, and I started learning about wrestling, and I was like, okay, this works as well. This is good too. This works.
And he's happy.
And it was a totally different scenario for him.
Wow. Abidhan, I remember having these conversations with you, but it's brought something back. And I really want to go back to that time. I think this is going to be so amazing for anybody who's ever felt betrayed or disappointed that something they encouraged their child to go into didn't work out. You seem to have done reasonably well with that. I'm not sure what happened exactly at the time, but take me back to that moment when, it was first brought to you. I'm sure the transition from jiu-jitsu to wrestling wasn't like overnight.
Yeah.
It would have taken time.
Especially to me.
Yeah. So at that time, you were not, learning about yourself, your behaviors, your mindset, and you were not necessarily doing a lot of that work, which eventually got onto. How did you feel at the time about yourself?
Well, I felt I did something wrong.
Right.
I was like, where did I go wrong with this guy? Like, what did I do? What did I say? What brought him to hate jiu-jitsu when we all love it so much? Our vacation went around jiu-jitsu competitions, and we would travel the whole country to compete. And I thought everybody, and he wasn't enjoying it, and he told me, you know what, I don't like this. And I was like, what did I do wrong? I'm trying to do something good for him, and it's not working. What? But then I was like, I got to be patient. I got to see this through. At least he's wanting to do something. And I have to remain true to myself and what I told him. If you want to swim, if you want to dance, it's fine.
Okay.
But you got to do something.
Okay.
That was like my and he was like, I'm gonna wrestle. I'm gonna train. I was like, yeah, because you gotta train every day.
But when you said true to yourself, means you have previously made mention that do something,
and I had to respect that.
I got it,
and I had to accept that.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, all right, let's do this. And then later, what happened? My youngest followed his footsteps. He was like, yeah, I don't want to do jiu-jitsu anymore. That was also heartbreaking for me because this kid was a 5-time Pan Am champion.
Right.
He was famous in jiu-jitsu world already, being just like 12. Because he started when he was 5. He started winning tournaments here in the United States.
So the first boy left and went to wrestling, and the second one followed. How long after?
Couple years.
Okay.
Couple years. As soon as he went into middle school, 7th grade, they're in the same location. The wrestling coach sees them, wants them there, and even though my youngest is in 5th or 6th grade, he's like, come train with our kids because you're good, mm-hmm. right? And he would wrestle, high schoolers that were his same weight and beat them and so he was like loving it. And then one day he said, you know what, I'm not gonna do jiu-jitsu anymore. I'm gonna do wrestling. And I was like, oh my God. But now, I'm happy where they're at, and it's also a challenge.
So as you look back, though, at least you're able to look back and see that they made choices, right? So that's the one part is when things like that happen, when children, you know, make certain decisions that can make us feel something about ourselves. But the second part is, I know by the time you worked with me and spoke to me, I think there was a lot of matters around communication
Yes.
between yours. Now they're in wrestling. Now they're doing at least something of their choice. And again, it's competitive. You know, they're running into situations that are not ideal. They're not sometimes losing, sometimes winning. And now you are also carrying a certain, predisposition, from what I remember, of dealing with them in certain ways when they're not winning, when they're behaving in certain ways. And I know that was the time when we started working together, and I worked with you on obviously helping you reset your thinking.
Yep.
And what your responses to them could lead to. And you have made a number of those changes. I know it's not always easy to, I know there's always more to do there. But tell me what's changed there. How were you communicating? How are you communicating now, at least where you're aware? And what's your overall perspective now? Because you deal with a lot of other parents whose children are in sports.
The conversations we've had, going through the NLP course,
Yes,
helped me understand the not the impact words have on
Yes.
on anybody.
Yeah.
Tone, body language, and I started being aware of that. I could tell, I could make my son understand that I don't like something he's doing by not saying a word. But is that good? Right? Is that I didn't say anything, but you acted this way, or you did this, and he knows. And so you're more aware of what you're doing about yourself, about the communication, verbal and non-verbal, that you have. And I wasn't aware of that before.
Right.
Until I learned.
So you would react.
I would react.
You'd say what you think you need to say right now.
I'd start probably fidgeting, and they know that.
Yes.
So that's important. If you want to, we always say we want the best for them. We want to help them. We want to take a load off their back. Well, really do it. It's starting from you.
Yes.
Because sometimes you are more pressure. Like, my son right now, that just went into college, we were having a conversation yesterday. He was like, "Dad, it's tough. I don't have any easy days right now. It's hard." And imagine if on top of that, I was pressuring him, like, and what are you doing? And did you win? Did you not? Like, I see many parents.
Yeah. You were saying earlier, one of your boys said it's like war every day.
It's a war every day.
And then on top of that, you coming and saying you got to do it this way. You got to win. Okay, don't do
Some
this.
Some kids get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
A few years, 2 years ago, I read an article about this girl in Stanford that killed herself. She was the goalie of the soccer team in Stanford. And, she was going into her senior year, and a better girl came in as a freshman and took her spot. And she couldn't handle it. And it's tough.
That's a very important point. There's the element of the parent wanting the best for the child, and at some point the child being disappointed in themselves, right? There is that element.
And how much do we pitch into that?
How much do we play a role in that? I want to go back to that point earlier about words. And we've spoken a lot about it. We train people in neurolinguistics and other personal development. It really is about, we start with language. There's a reason for it. I'm going to say this line here right now. Your parents' voice largely will become your inner voice.
That's true.
Your parents' voice when you were little will largely become your inner voice when you're an adult. Now, parents are normal people. Parents are human beings. It's not unreasonable for a parent to suddenly get upset, or I think I would be lying if I said to you, I've said every single thing right to my children. But I do know I needed that awareness at some point where if I say this right now, will he play that in his head in times to come? And I think that's the most critical point here.
Yes, the problem is we're not always aware.
We cannot be.
And I wasn't until I learned that,
Yes.
from you. And I was like, I've been messing up all my life without even knowing it. And thankfully, there's timeline therapy, right?
Yes.
And when I remember the first time I did timeline therapy with you, and I started seeing the results in the following weeks, I was like, wow, my kids need to go through this because I have probably hurt them, parenting them, and they need to clear this up.
And they're both going through it with our team right now.
Yes, exactly.
And this is, I think if there's one message, if there are parents listening to this show right now, it's like there is a point at which you, once we become parents, we have responsibility for someone now. It's like automatic authority, automatic leadership. And what can come with it is that I don't need to know anything more. Yeah. Don't tell me what to do. I'm raising children. And I think that's dangerous because we are not taking the opportunity now to train ourselves. And you learn from timeline. We have our own histories.
Yeah.
We have our own past. We have our own significant emotional events. We have things that our parents said to us. Yes. We are things that we witnessed through our life. And now, if we never look at them, if we never find a way to reset them, we could take certain behaviors into our parenting.
Yeah.
And that's what I keep shouting about. The top of the mountain, I train so many people, so many adults.
We train them to have those same fears, to have those same doubts, to have that same energy about something, and they didn't even go through it, and it's our fault. That's why I think timeline therapy is so cool. It's one of the things that I've gotten the most impacted by from being at Neuromasters Academy. It's so cool that you could go back to a moment and remove a negative
emotion from an event. Yeah, you can literally press the.
You don't forget it.
Yeah,
you don't erase the memory.
It's right there.
It's right there, but you don't feel the energy that you felt anymore, and that clears you from
it's like the reset button.
It's a reset.
We reset everything else. We service our cars. We have to maintain our homes. What about us?
That's right.
Right? And we cannot carry 20, 30, 40 years of what happened and then look at everything from those eyes. And I'm so pleased when I see grown, successful adults like you. I think you've done a lot in your life. You've been in real estate. You could sit there and say, Reg, what are you going to tell me what to do? Like, look at all this success that I've created. And that's my message. Because if you don't, you're definitely going to lack the ability to help your children in so many, and your children don't just need you to tell them how to succeed. Your children need a role model. They need a guide. When shit hits the fan, when they have their own marriage problems, they need to be able to ring you up and say, Dad, this is what's happening.
That's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, you would have seen our energy cube. We talk about, the cubes and the energy cube, and we have so many units of energy available at any given time to create the future. But if you're operating from the past, it becomes harder and harder. And you can see I'm very passionate about it. And we've even got a book coming out, The Energy Cube Secret. For all of these,
can't wait to see it.
Yeah. It's the same things. And I think it applies in parenting. It applies in relationships. But the thing with parenting is, the other thing you mentioned earlier, studies after studies are now shown that emotions, I'm sure you've heard about the fact that emotions can pass down from a mother to a child. That's one point. But there's further studies that imply that parents' common emotional states will almost pass down genealogically. And even if you don't believe that, the emotional states that you frequent will be mirrored by your children. It's a concept called mirror neurons. So when you reset everything in your life, when you give it new meanings, I cannot tell you how many of my students have confirmed back to me, my children are operating, thinking, behaving differently. Mm-hmm. You want to call it magic? Go ahead and call it magic. But it's true. We see it over and over again.
Yeah.
Right? How would you say your son's emotional states have been largely since you started to work on yourself?
Well, what I started working with you, and first I noticed differences. I started notice in my thought patterns.
Yes.
Or being aware.
Being aware
of oh, now I'm going into this. Oh, why am I thinking this again? Why? Before that, you just start thinking about a negative thing, and then you're milking it all day, and it's growing and it's growing and it's growing, and you're having a terrible day. Why? Because you can't make your mind stop and think what you want it to think.
Yes.
and you don't realize that, or many people don't realize that. I didn't until I learned about all this, and it has helped me a lot. That's why I was like, my kids need to work. They're athletes. They have challenges every day.
Yep.
They face, reality. They face frustration every day. They have goals. You name it, and because I see it, I suffer with them at every match, at every training, at every, and I'm like, they need this desperately.
Yep.
And they started working a few months. They recently just started, but I'm already seeing differences. My youngest had a very tough event for him last season in wrestling, but
it's how he responds to it, right?
He lost. We couldn't even mention it in the house.
Yeah, wow.
We couldn't even talk about it because he would lose it. He was so mad. And then, he started working with Jenny. And I think it was like the second or the third session, we were watching TV. And he started talking to me about it. And I was like, okay, we're doing this now. And I realized he's talking about it because it's not that heavy in him anymore. He's released that energy,
a lot of that stuck energy,
and that helps a lot. Work through stuff, faster than going to a normal therapist.
I mean, look, therapy has its place, but
yes,
listen, especially with athletes, like we work with a lot of athletes, and they need to get results now,
quickly.
not in 5 years.
They compete every week, and they need to be recovered physically and mentally by the following week.
Yep.
And how are you going to accomplish that? You know, if it's not with something like this.
Yep. One last thing I want to cover before we finish up this episode, Abidhan, and I'm interested in your input on that too. At some point in my journey as a parent, as a husband, as a leader, business leader, as a trainer, as a teacher, it became adequately obvious that children will not always, or kids, or grown-up kids, whatever you want to call them, will not always do what you tell them to do, but they will do what you do.
Yes,
they will do what you do. And in the case of boys in particular, there's a lot of studies that have shown that a boy's emotional behaviors will be very close to the father's. So if a dad or a father or showed, while raising his children, demonstrated, say, constant bickering or constant, yelling at, say, their partner, the likelihood is a lot higher that the boys will respond in the same way when they have their life partners. Yeah. That's one example. But also about how was the dad responding in tough situations? How are they responding? How are they reacting? And the good news that I want to state here is, if you, whoever's listening to this, as you think of this now, as you look back at your life, if you've got children and there are certain behaviors that you know now and you're worrying now that perhaps your children may model or reflect back, the great news is it's never too late. As long as they haven't left the home and that's not the only thing they remember about you, for you to completely rewire what they know about you. And I just wanted to state that possibility. What would you say to that?
Totally. I think, like I've said, numerous times here, first of all, you got to be aware, right? Of how you're reacting. How is this going to, affect them, or how are they going to take this? Even though there's no mention of it, like you said, everybody's watching. It even happens in your office.
Yep.
Like you have a team. I have a team, and I've worked with other entrepreneurs that have a team. A secretary, an assistant, an accountant, and I've noticed people that have been long enough with them imitate or are like them. And I'm like,
The concept of neurolinguistics, we call it modeling.
Exactly. And it happens. So if you're being aware of how you react to stressful situations, not only in your house, but even in your business, people are going to look up to that and probably admire you for that, right? And you're doing good.
Yeah. Well, so some of that is conscious, but a lot of that, as you would realize now, is unconscious or from the subconscious level. You see, our mind is always taking pictures, it's always taking sounds, and it's like a pictogram.
Yeah.
And it's always looking for references from the past.
Yep.
And a lot of references that we get are from our parents.
Or authority figures, right?
Authority figures, people we look up to. So I think, I want to end this episode by, I'm sure that if you're listening to it, you can detect the passion in both Abidhan and myself here about the reality is this. I talk very passionately about people working on their mindsets, their emotions. But when it comes down to it, let's look at the real impact of that. It's on parenting. It's on people's own behaviors. It's on children. I mean, these guys, and these days, and Abidhan, you and I was speaking before the episode, the reality for parenting in 2024 and beyond is that children are no longer listening to only the parents' voices. I think we got to stop kidding ourselves.
Yeah.
They're on Instagram, they're on social media, they're on TikTok, right? They have access to 1,000 more voices, the whole world, and you don't know.
Good and bad.
There was a time where you knew it was the teachers at home, maybe some friends, maybe some sports stars they looked up to, and then it was you. Now, I mean, I can share an example of a lady who was one of our students who her 14 or 15-year-old child attacked her physically at home. And then she found out that he was listening to some guy on Instagram who had a big following, who said that your parents are clones. Now, I don't want to go into the nitty-gritties of that. The reality is this kid had the audacity to physically attack his mom.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's an extreme, right?
That's an extreme, but you don't know what else is going on in their minds right now. It happens
with behaviors. Yeah, I remember that conversation you and I had one day when I was trying to make my communication with especially my oldest better,
yes.
Right? And one of the questions you asked me is, who's his role model?
Mm-hmm.
Who's his hero? What singers does he listen to? And I kind of knew the answer to those, but I never paid attention to that. And it's so important. And like you say, but it's so hard now to keep track of that because they're looking at so many people, so many influencers, so many on TikTok, on Instagram. It's hard to keep track. But we just got to be there, present, and
look, it's more important than ever. We cannot control what we cannot control. But my point is now, and I'm saying this even as a dad right now, is that never has there been a time where kids have needed their parents to be role models. Never greater than now. Because if you ask, and I've asked my sons this, if you ask them, they deeply want you to be their role model. Go ask them. They will tell you. Because who they model, and I remember having this conversation with you, who a person models means looks up to is something we teach in our programs, and we help people decipher that and figure out how it's all turned out. Who you model or look up to as a youth will impact your life's outcomes. I can prove that to you. It impacts your life's outcomes. So very important. Even a lot of us growing up, we looked up to actors and singers and movie stars and sports stars. And I have tons of examples where if a singer that a kid looked up to has had 3 divorces, and I look at the person's life's results, I've started to see similarities like that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's slightly from the woo-woo space, but hey, that's all relevant when it comes to parenting. So I want to thank you for joining me here. I know you're a client of mine, but all around, you are someone that I see as a model for other people, for other parents, because it's not been easy for you.
Oh no.
But you haven't sat back and said, no, I'm right, Reg. I know what I'm doing. Look at my kids. They've gotten results in wrestling. Look at my life's results. I know what I'm doing. You came in with curiosity. You said, what is it that I don't know? I don't know. Is it, I know it's not too late. I know I can impact them positively. And I'm, as your mentor, as your friend, I'm pleased to say that if it's not already happening to the degree we'd like it to be, you will be one of the main role models for both of your sons. I can see that happening.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming for the show.
Thank you for having me. It was a great experience. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Neuromasters Show. I'm Reg Malhotra, reminding you that your trauma is seen, your transformation is possible, and your breakthrough is right around the corner. If you found today's episode valuable, you can visit our website for many more resources, to register for a live breakthrough experience, and to continue your journey of reclaiming your full self.